Imagine borrowing money from a man who hates you, and the penalty for not paying it back isn't interest, it isn't your house, it's a pound of your own flesh, cut from wherever he chooses. That's the deal. And the worst part? Cutting the flesh was his idea. He called it a joke. So why would anyone sign it? And how do you escape a contract like that? The answer is one word, spoken in a courtroom that nobody saw coming. This is The Merchant of Venice, and by the end, you'll understand why people have argued about that courtroom for 400 years. Welcome to StoryLit.Learny, where the classics come to life without the headache. Subscribe so you never miss a story. In Venice, the richest trading city in the world, there lived a merchant named Antonio, a man with ships at sea, gold in the bank, and a friend at every table in the city. By every measure, he should have been the happiest man in Venice. But that simply wasn't the case. A strange heaviness sat on him, a sadness he could neither explain nor shake. His friends teased him about it, and they blamed love or business, but Antonio only shook his head, because he did not know what was wrong. He only knew that something felt like it was coming. His closest friend in the world was a young man named Bassanio, charming and warm and generous to a fault, yet almost always out of money. He had spent far beyond his means for years, and Antonio had quietly covered him every time. So when Bassanio arrived one afternoon with a nervous smile, Antonio already knew this was about money. What he did not expect was the reason. Bassanio was in love with Portia, a wealthy heiress in the town of Belmont, who was famous across all of Europe. She was beautiful and sharp, and so rich that suitors sailed from distant kingdoms just to court her. Bassanio believed she favoured him, but to travel to Belmont and present himself among princes, he needed money he simply did not have. "Lend me enough to court her properly," he asked, "and I swear I will repay you everything I already owe, and this too." Antonio did not hesitate for a second and told him, "You know everything I have is yours." But there was a problem, and it was a serious one, because Antonio's wealth, though real, was not in his hands. Every coin he owned was loaded onto his ships, scattered across the sea, and not one of them had yet returned to port. On paper, he was rich, yet in his pocket, he had nothing. So Antonio made a decision that would nearly destroy him. Rather than let Bassanio down, he would borrow the money against his ships, using his good name as a merchant for the guarantee. And in Venice, there was one man with the gold to lend and every reason to say yes. A moneylender named Shylock. So Antonio and Bassanio went to find Shylock, and the terms were simple enough on the surface. 3,000 ducats for 3 months, with Antonio bound to repay it. Shylock listened, and he turned the numbers over slowly, weighing them aloud. Antonio was a good man, he admitted, meaning a man good for the money, yet his wealth was uncertain. One ship was bound for Tripoli, another for the Indies, a third for Mexico, and the fourth for England. All of his fortune scattered across the sea at once. And ships were only boards, sailors only men. There were water rats and land rats, pirates, winds and rocks. Still, he said, the man was sufficient, and he would consider it. But beneath that careful calculation, something else was burning, because Shylock hated Antonio, and he had good reasons. Antonio was a Christian, in a city where Christians held all the power, and Shylock, as a Jew, held almost none. But the resentment went beyond that. Antonio lent money freely, without charging interest, which dragged down the rates that Shylock lived by and undercut his entire trade in Venice. And there was more, something far more personal than business. For years, Antonio had treated Shylock with open contempt. On the Rialto, the great bridge where the merchants gathered, Antonio had cursed him over his money lending, called him a misbeliever and a cutthroat dog, and spat upon his coat. He had kicked him aside like a stray animal. And now here stood that very same man, asking Shylock for a favour. Shylock did not let the moment pass. "You called me a dog before you had a reason," he said, "so beware my fangs, perhaps. You spat on me, you spurned me, and now you want my money. What should I say to you? Should a dog have money? Can a stray lend 3,000 ducats?" Antonio did not flinch, and he did not apologise. "I am likely to call you that again, to spit on you again, and spurn you again. If you lend this money, do not lend it as a friend. Lend it to your enemy, so that if I fail, you may collect your penalty with a clear conscience." And that, strangely, was when Shylock smiled. He wanted to be friends, he said. He would wipe away the insults, lend the full sum, and charge not a single coin of interest. He asked only for one small thing, just a bit of fun between them, a merry sport. They would go to a notary and sign a bond, and if Antonio failed to repay the money on the agreed day, the forfeit would be 1 pound of his fair flesh, cut from whatever part of his body Shylock chose.
Bassanio went cold and said, "You shall not sign this for me. I would rather stay poor." But Antonio only laughed. His ships would return a full month before the debt was even due, loaded with 3 times this value. There was no danger in it. So he agreed and signed, and Shylock went smiling into the night to fetch the notary. While Antonio was binding himself to Shylock in Venice, far away in Belmont, Portia was a prisoner of a very different kind of contract. She was beautiful, wealthy, and one of the sharpest minds in the story, yet she could not choose her own husband. Her late father had seen to that. In his will, he had devised a test, and until it was solved, Portia's hand was not hers to give. The test was this. There were 3 caskets, one of gold, one of silver, and one of lead. Hidden inside one of them was a portrait of Portia. Any man who wished to marry her had to choose a single casket, and if he chose the one holding her picture, he won her. But if he chose wrong, the price was severe. He had to swear never to marry, never to court another woman, and to leave at once. One wrong guess, and a man gave up the chance of a wife forever. Portia hated it. She sat with her companion Nerissa and mocked the parade of suitors who had come to try their luck. And what a parade it was.
As for the suitors, there was a prince from Naples who could speak of nothing but his horse. There was a gloomy count who never smiled. A Frenchman so changeable he seemed to be 20 men in one, and an Englishman who could not understand a word anyone said. There was a German who was only interesting while drunk, which was always. Portia had a sharp word for every one of them, and to her enormous relief, one by one, they all looked at the terms of the test, lost their nerve, and sailed home without ever choosing. But there was one suitor Portia did not mock. When Nerissa reminded her of a young Venetian who had once visited, a scholar and a soldier named Bassanio, Portia's tone changed. She remembered him. Of all the men she had seen, she admitted quietly, he was the one most deserving of a fair lady. But she did not yet know he was already on his way.
The first true challenger was the Prince of Morocco, a proud and commanding man who arrived certain he would win. Portia bound him to the rules before he began. If he chose wrong, he could never marry, never court another woman, and must leave at once. He accepted without hesitation. He studied the 3 caskets, and on each was written a line. The gold one read, "Who chooses me shall gain what many men desire, the silver. Who chooses me shall get as much as he deserves. And the lead, blunt and unwelcoming. Who chooses me must give and risk all he has.
Morocco reasoned aloud, and his logic was the logic of a confident man. Lead? Risk everything for dull, common lead? Never. Silver, and what he deserves. He believed he deserved a great deal, but the word felt like a small thing. But gold, what many men desire. Of course, the whole world desired Portia. Men crossed oceans for her. A jewel like her could only rest in the most precious metal of all. He chose gold, and he opened it with a triumphant hand. Inside was no portrait. There lay a grinning skull, and in its empty eye socket a scroll that read, "All that glisters is not gold." He had been seduced by the shine, and he had lost. Morocco left quickly, too heartsick to linger, and Portia breathed a quiet sigh of relief and said, "Let all of his complexion choose me so." Next came the Prince of Aragon, and where Morocco was proud, Aragon was vain, in a colder, more calculating way. He scorned the gold at once. He would not choose what the foolish multitude desired, lumping himself in with common minds. The lead was beneath him, too cheap to risk anything for. But silver, as much as he deserves, that flattered him perfectly. He was a man of merit, a man of station, and surely he deserved Portia. He chose silver, certain his own worth would be reflected back at him. It was. Inside was the portrait of a blinking idiot, a fool's head holding a scroll that mocked him for thinking he was wiser than he was. Aragon had assumed his merit was obvious. The casket told him he was a fool for assuming it. He left, sputtering, and Portia was rid of yet another. 2 princes, 2 certainties, 2 wrong answers. The gold had punished the man dazzled by surface. The silver had punished the man swollen with self-regard. Only the lead remained, the one casket that asked a man not what he could get, but what he was willing to give and risk. And at that exact moment, a servant rushed in with news. A young Venetian had arrived at the gate, and he was asking for Portia. When Bassanio arrived in Belmont, something shifted in Portia that had not stirred for any prince before him. She did not want him to choose at all, because if he chose wrong, she would lose him forever, and the rules gave her no power to help. She begged him to wait a day or 2 before risking it, to stay a while, so that even in losing, she might keep his company longer. But Bassanio could not bear the suspense. He told her the waiting was a kind of torture. He had to choose, and he had to choose now. So Portia did the only thing she could. She let him approach the caskets, and she watched, helpless, as the man she loved walked toward a choice that would decide both their lives. And here Bassanio did something the 2 princes never managed. He distrusted the surface. He stood before the gold and the silver and reasoned that the world is endlessly fooled by ornament, that evil hides behind a fair face, that the most beautiful things are often the most false. Juries are swayed by a gentle voice. Cowards wear the beards of brave men. Beauty can be bought by the ounce. Outward show, he decided, was the worst guide of all, and so he turned away from the gleaming metals and toward the plain, threatening lead, the one that promised nothing and demanded everything. He said, "You meagre lead, your plainness moves me more than eloquence." And he chose it. The casket opened, and there she was, Portia's portrait, so lifelike it seemed to breathe. Beneath it lay a scroll, inviting the man who had not chosen by the eye,
to turn and claim his lady with a loving kiss. Bassanio had won. Portia, who moments before had been powerless, now poured herself out to him completely. She wished she were 1,000 times more beautiful, 10,000 times richer, just to be worthier in his eyes. She said everything she was and everything she owned was now his. And she gave him a ring with a single solemn instruction. He must never sell it, never give it away, never lose it. As long as he wore it, it was the sign of their love. To part with it would mean the end of that love. Bassanio swore that only death would take that ring from his finger. It was a vow made in pure happiness. He had no idea how soon it would be tested.
The celebration in Belmont was at its height. Bassanio had won Portia, and his friend Gratiano had a confession of his own, that while Bassanio courted Portia, he had fallen in love with her companion Nerissa, and she with him. So now there would be 2 weddings instead of 1, 2 couples joined on the same joyful day. The mood could not have been higher. And that was the exact moment the door opened on bad news. A messenger arrived from Venice, and with him came Bassanio's friends, and one of them carried a letter. It was from Antonio. Bassanio read it, and the colour drained from his face. Portia watched the change in him and pressed him to tell her the truth, whatever it was, because she was now his wife and his troubles were hers. So Bassanio confessed everything. The borrowed money, the bond, the pound of flesh. He admitted that the wealth he had used to win her had not been his own at all, but borrowed on the life of his dearest friend. And now the letter said the worst had happened. Every one of Antonio's ships had failed. Not one had come home. The debt was due, and Antonio could not pay. The letter said more, and it was grim. Shylock was not interested in money anymore. Bassanio had friends in Venice who offered to repay the debt many times over, 2, 3 times, even 10 times the original sum. Shylock refused all of it. He did not want ducats. He wanted what the bond promised. He wanted the pound of flesh. And the law of Venice was on his side, because a signed bond was a signed bond. Antonio's letter was almost gentle in its despair. He asked only one thing of Bassanio, not to come and save him, for he believed nothing could, but simply to come and see him once before the end, so that he might look upon his friend's face a final time. He released Bassanio from all guilt. If Bassanio would only be there at his death, Antonio would consider the debt of friendship paid in full. Portia did not hesitate for a moment. She told Bassanio to go to Venice at once, to take whatever gold he needed, to pay 20 times the debt if it would help. They would marry first, that very hour, so he could leave with a clear heart. And then she sent the man she loved racing back toward the city to try to save his friend. But Portia had no intention of simply waiting at home and praying. She had a plan of her own, and she had told no one.
To understand why Shylock refused the money, we have to go back a little to something that happened in Venice while Bassanio was away winning Portia. Shylock had a daughter. Her name was Jessica, and she was the one person left in the world he loved. But Jessica was miserable in her father's house. She found him cold and his home joyless, and she had fallen in love with a young Christian named Lorenzo, one of Bassanio's circle. And so one night, she made her choice. While Shylock was out at dinner, Jessica disguised herself as a boy, emptied a casket of her father's gold and jewels, and slipped out into the dark to run away with Lorenzo. She did not just leave her father. She robbed him, abandoned his faith, and married into the very group of men who scorned him, all in a single night.
When Shylock came home to an empty house, something in him broke. He ran through the streets of Venice howling, and the cruelty of the city only mocked him for it. Boys followed him jeering, imitating his cries of, "My daughter, my ducats," his child and his money, gone together, and a crowd laughing at his ruin. Whatever softness was left in Shylock died in those streets. From that night on, he wanted one thing. He wanted Antonio.
Soon after, 2 of Antonio's acquaintances found Shylock and questioned him. Surely, they said, he would not actually take a pound of flesh. What was it even good for? And Shylock gave them an answer that has echoed for 400 years. It would feed his revenge, he told them. Antonio had shamed him, mocked him, cost him $500,000, laughed at his losses and scorned his people. And for what reason? For one reason only. Because Shylock was a Jew. And then he asked the question that stops the whole play cold.
Has a Jew not eyes? Has a Jew not hands, organs, senses, feelings, passions? Fed by the same food, wounded by the same weapons, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as a Christian? If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not seek revenge? If we are like you in everything else, then we are like you in this too. The villainy you teach me, I will practice, and I will do it better than you ever did.
It is the most uncomfortable speech in the play, because Shylock is not entirely wrong. He has been treated as less than human, and now he intends to be exactly as monstrous as the men who made him. The victim and the villain have become the same person, and he was about to carry that fury into a courtroom.
The day of judgment came. In the great court of Venice, the Duke himself presided, and the room was full. Antonio stood ready, pale but calm, a man who had already made peace with dying. Bassanio was there, frantic, his purse full of gold, begging for any way to pay. And Shylock stood waiting with his knife and his scales, the bond in his hand, and the law on his side. The Duke tried first. He appealed to Shylock's mercy, expecting him to relent at the last moment, to take the money and spare the man. Shylock would not. He had sworn a holy oath to have his bond, he said, and no power in Venice could make him break it. Why did he prefer rotting flesh to 3,000 gold ducats? He gave no reason but his own will. He said,
"Some men hate a harmless cat. Some cannot bear the sound of bagpipes. And I simply hate Antonio."
And that was answer enough. Bassanio offered the money, 6,000 ducats, double the debt, but Shylock waved it away. If every one of those ducats were 6, and each one split into 6 again, he would not take them. He wanted the flesh.
It seemed hopeless. The law was clear, the bond was valid, and the Duke could not simply ignore Venetian law without making every contract in the city worthless. He was about to give up the case when word came that a learned young lawyer had arrived to advise the court, sent with a letter of recommendation from a famous legal scholar. The lawyer was small, beardless, and very young, dressed in a doctor's robes. No one in that room recognized who it truly was. It was Portia. While everyone believed she was praying at home for her husband's safe return, she had disguised herself as a male lawyer, and her companion Nerissa stood beside her dressed as a clerk. She had studied the bond, and she had come to do what no man in Venice could. Strangely, she began, not by attacking Shylock, but by agreeing with him. The bond was valid, she said. The law was on his side. Antonio had signed, and the penalty was lawful. Shylock could barely contain his delight and said, "A Daniel come to judgment.
praising the wise young lawyer who saw the case so clearly. He sharpened his knife. But before she ruled, Portia gave Shylock one last chance to choose a different path, and she did it with words that have outlived everyone who first heard them. She told him, "Mercy cannot be forced. It falls gently, like rain from heaven onto the earth below, and it blesses twice, the one who gives it and the one who receives it. It is mightiest in the mightiest. It suits a king better than his crown, because power shows itself most godlike when it tempers justice with mercy. We pray to God for mercy," she reminded him, "and that same prayer should teach us all to show mercy to one another." She was not denying that the law was on his side. She was asking him to rise above it. "Then take 3 times your money," she offered. "Let me tear up the bond." But Shylock would not bend and said, "I crave the law, the penalty and forfeit of my bond." He had waited too long and hurt too much. He wanted his pound of flesh, and the law said he could have it.
So Portia nodded. Very well, the law would give him exactly what he asked for. Exactly what the bond said, and not one thing more. And that was the trap closing, though Shylock could not see it yet. Portia gave the ruling. The bond was lawful, and Shylock could take his pound of flesh. She told Antonio to bare his chest, and Shylock stepped forward with his knife and his scales, ready at last. There was nothing left to stop him. And then, just as the blade was about to fall, Portia spoke again. "Wait, there was one more thing. The bond was very precise. It granted him a pound of flesh. Those were its exact words. A pound of flesh. It said nothing, not a single syllable, about blood." The room went still. "So take your pound of flesh," she told him. "But in cutting it, if you spill one drop of Christian blood, the law of Venice is clear. Your lands and your goods are forfeit to the state, because the bond gave you flesh, and only flesh, not blood. Take the flesh then, but shed no blood. And do not take more than 1 pound, or less, not by the weight of a single hair, or you die and lose everything." It was impossible, and everyone in the room knew it at once. You cannot cut a pound of living flesh from a man's body without spilling his blood. The very thing that made the punishment deadly was the thing the contract had failed to permit. Shylock had spent the whole play standing on the exact letter of the law. Now the exact letter of the law had turned in his hand and cut him instead. Shylock saw it instantly. The triumph drained out of him. He said, "Then I will take the money. Pay me 3 times the bond and let the man go." Bassanio reached eagerly for his gold, but Portia stopped him. No. Shylock had refused the money in open court. He had demanded the law, nothing but the law, and now the law was all he would get. He would have his pound of flesh, or he would have nothing at all. Shylock, beaten, turned to leave, with not even his original loan. But Portia was not finished, because the law of Venice had one more blade in it, and it was pointed straight at him. There was a statute, she said, for exactly this. If any foreigner was proven to have plotted, directly or indirectly, against the life of a Venetian citizen, then half of that foreigner's wealth went to the intended victim, the other half to the state, and his very life lay at the mercy of the Duke. And Shylock had done precisely that. He had sought, with his knife and his bond, to take the life of Antonio, a citizen of Venice. The hunter had become the prey. The man who came to court demanding a life now stood there about to lose his own. Shylock stood ruined, his life now in the Duke's hands,
And here the play does something that still unsettles audiences today. The Duke, wanting to show the difference between Christian mercy and the mercy Shylock had refused to give, spared his life before Shylock could even ask, and said, "You will see the difference in our spirit." But mercy and generosity were not the same thing. Half of Shylock's wealth would go to Antonio, the man he had tried to kill, and the other half to the state. His life was spared, but everything he owned was being stripped away. Then Antonio spoke and offered his own terms. He would not take his half of the money for himself. He would hold it and pass it on after Shylock's death to Lorenzo and Jessica, the daughter who had robbed Shylock and run away. And he added one more condition, the one that cuts deepest of all. Shylock must convert. He must become a Christian.
So Shylock left the court alive, but emptied of everything. His money gone, his daughter gone, his faith taken from him by force. He had walked in demanding justice, and justice had taken not just his case, but his entire identity. He simply said he was not well and asked to leave, and he is never seen in the play again. Now, the danger was over, and the mood lifts deliberately because Shakespeare ends this dark story as a comedy. Antonio was saved, but Portia, still disguised as the young lawyer, had one last trick to play, this time on her own husband. When the grateful Bassanio asked how he could ever repay the brilliant lawyer who had saved his friend, Portia, still in disguise, asked for only one thing: the ring on his finger. The very ring she herself had given him, the one he swore he would never remove until death. Bassanio refused at first, ashamed, explaining it was a gift from his wife and carried a solemn vow. But Antonio gently urged him. Surely the man who just saved my life is worth more than a ring? And so, reluctantly, Bassanio handed it over to the lawyer he did not know was his wife. Back in Belmont, Portia and Nerissa arrived home first, out of their disguises, innocent as anything. And when their husbands returned, the wives demanded to see their rings. Of course, neither man could produce one. Both had given them away to a lawyer and his clerk in Venice. The wives pretended to be furious. How could they part with such a sacred token? They must have given the rings to other women. The husbands stammered and swore it was a man, a lawyer, who would take nothing else. And Portia and Nerissa let them twist in guilt for as long as it was funny, before finally revealing the truth. They had been the lawyer and the clerk all along. The wives had saved Antonio's life and had outwitted their own husbands twice over. The laughter washed away the darkness of the courtroom. Antonio then received the best news of all, that 3 of his ships, given up for lost, had come safely home to harbour after all. He was wealthy again. And so the story ends in Belmont, a long way from a knife and a pound of flesh.
That is The Merchant of Venice, a story that asks an uncomfortable question and refuses to answer it for you. Was Shylock a villain who got what he deserved, or a wronged man pushed to monstrous things by people who were never punished for what they did to him? 400 years later, we are still arguing about it. That is why it lasts. If you enjoyed this story, there are many more waiting for you here at StoryLit.Learny. Subscribe and let us bring the classics to life for you, one story at a time. Thank you for listening.